we have covered some of the next questions and what we've just been discussing. I'm quite keen that it gets opened up to anyone in the audience. So if that's okay, just to skip to the last couple of questions. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions. Cool.
Can I just pick up on your comment just a minute ago about successful projects for the city? Because it seemed to me that the things that you mentioned were incredibly inward-looking success, so it's kind of community engagement in some respect, but projects that have engaged the kind of city and its population. And that actually, perhaps we should perhaps consider the success of the city on a kind of international dialogue, and that word might not be that interesting in that respect. I don't know what you think about that.
So, from my perspective, being, you know, obviously you can't tell by my accent, but I'm from Newcastle.
Sure.
For me, Newcastle is interesting at an international level.
Okay. No.
But from that perspective, I can see what you mean, because what brings that international credibility in terms of a knowledge economy, in terms of broadening that out to an international marketplace, is these big marquee kind of ideas of what is an exhibition, of what is art. I mean, those kind of things embedded into the cultural identity of the city have a huge marquee draw value in the international market. But in terms of that context of engaging the local people in that process, for me individually, there is no virtue in having the Baltic there if the local people don't go to it. Because the lifeblood of the Baltic won't necessarily be the tourists that are coming through all the time. You need to have matching that with the local people going into it to be able to balance that in terms of making it a sustainable feature of Newcastle's identity.
Certainly the flagship projects that this Baltic has done also before my time certainly contributed to Newcastle being perceived very well outside of Newcastle. I mean, the main field by Anthony Gormley, there were queues outside to look at it, and also on an international level. Whether you or me or whoever else like Anthony Gormley's work or not, he is considered one of the leading artists, living artists in this country and internationally. Spencer Tunick, again, whatever one feels about his work, the project that is done here has had more coverage than anything else in this region. It has produced enormous economic value to this town and this region, which has been quantified. And in relation to the art world, it was on the cover of a leading art magazine, and the review was very positive. It was reviewed on 2 national newspapers very positively. So I do think that this project can work both ways.
Anyone else?
Also, this thing about what Chappie Endo was talking about public spaces. When you had the Handyside Arcade, for example, which is now Elton Gardens, which is where kind of like the goths and the punks and stuff like these hang out on a Saturday. I don't know. I think the problem in Newcastle is that too much faith in the experts. In the same way as like New Labour puts far too much faith in experts, and they're generally sort of like lunatics.
I'd say my sort of by way of a short response is that there's a problem in Newcastle City Council, which I'm sure you're aware of as well, in terms of the culture of what consultation means, and that is being addressed through various things, such as works that they've done with Peanut Institute at Northumberland University about engendering participatory appraisal. You wouldn't have graffiti boards up, you probably wouldn't have the exhibition at the Baltic in terms of street art without these kind of participatory forums in terms of bringing these people forward. So they are trying to address the problems. However, I agree with you. I don't think culture change on that kind of scale is ever going to happen, but they are making some efforts to work towards changing that. So you can't necessarily lambast them full broadside and say, well, you're not doing it right. They are making efforts, it's just that they're not as holistic as we would like.
Okay, just one last question. Andrew.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the word heritage come up a couple of times tonight, because that's usually considered a bit of a dirty word, particularly when it comes to contemporary art. But if you think about what defines Newcastle, this region, to a lot of people, it is engineering solutions. It's things like the Tyne Bridge, the rocket, Turbinia. And if you think about the most sort of successful recent projects, or some of the most successful recent projects, they are things that really embody that idea of engineering, like the new bridge over the Tyne, or whether you like it or not, Anthony Gormley's Angel. And I just wonder whether you see heritage as being a dirty word and something that we want to eschew, or whether actually that still has some kind of relevance.
I personally, I think nostalgia and sentimentality are dirty words, not heritage. Because as you said, the heritage here, like many places, is actually one of innovation. So the key word in a lot of regenerations, because I get that creative class in innovators, well, that's exactly the heritage we're building on. And that's where I think that contemporary art has a really strong role, because it's about cohesion and continuity in that sense. A lot of artists working in the public realm today are, very much collaborating with engineers and scientists, and and it's really something moving forward. I think it's where we get really sentimental and go. When I'm in Walker, for example, and people are talking to me about something that is a sculpture dedicated to all their loss, I don't see any real place for that. The fact that they had good work there, etc., and that the kids that are dropping out of school there need to see something, that says that this place has importance, and you need to be alive and vital here, now, and you need to figure out what the hell you're going to do with your life. And I think contemporary art builds on that heritage. I mean, I can't imagine, the people of the industrial age, going, don't build the railroads because we've always used horses going across the bridge. That's our heritage, And so we have to be very careful. And that's what I guess I try to steer away from, is that kind of sentimentality.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up there. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to the panel of speakers, to Pete, Matthew, Elizabeth, and Julie. Thanks to everyone for coming along tonight. If we could please warm welcome again for
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world, wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the skies, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world, wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself,